I want to begin this morning by talking about the exciting news this week in our diocese. I'm assuming everyone's heard by now, but just in case, and you're kind of like late to the party like me, on Tuesday, Pope Francis accepted the early retirement, the resignation of Bishop Jugas, and named Bishop-elect Michael Martin, Franciscan priest, as the 5th bishop of the Diocese of Charlotte. And when I say if you're late to the party like me, for some of you know this, Tuesday is my weekend. As you know, Saturday, Sunday, I'm here. I'm up early. I'm going. Tuesdays, I like to sleep in. And like 8 o'clock, it's kind of nice. It's wonderful. I feel like 8 o'clock is like priest teenager noon, And it's a wonderful thing. And I was so excited this past Tuesday to just relax. It was going to be great, the post-Easter, finally getting to put my feet up. And my phone starts ringing at 8:15, and it's Michael Becker. And he's like, "Have you checked your email?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Check it." And so I do, and it was him and our principal, Aaron Brinkley, on the phone. And it was like, wow, oh my goodness. And it was funny because the email came out at 6:11, I think is what it was. And Father Marcel was here to cover, so he'd already made the announcement. And so I was the last one in the parish to find out. And it was fine. It's all great. But it's a very exciting thing. I don't know if you saw the press conference on Tuesday in which Bishop-elect Martin, gave his prepared remarks, answered questions, but there were beautiful responses. And one of the first things he did was to send an email out to all of us priests to invite us over to the bishop's residence for an open house to meet him on Tuesday night. And I got to spend just a couple minutes with him on Tuesday, and it was so great to get to meet him. He seems just as personable in person as he did in the press conference. So that's really exciting. And so between that and this gospel, there are two things that have been in my mind all week that remind me of seminary and my early days of priesthood. The first one is this: we used to play a game, and it's a silly game, that seminarians play. It's oh, if I'm a bishop someday, what would my motto be? Because, bishops take a motto, and so when we had Bishop Curlin, his was Sentiri cum Christo, which comes from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, which means to think with, to feel with Christ. Basically to put on the mind of Christ in yourself. It's beautiful. Bishop Jugas's was Caritas Christi urgit nos. The love of Christ impels us. It's a quote from St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. Also beautiful. And we used to talk about, okay, what would yours be? And the best one I ever heard was from my friend, Father Andy Budzinski, and it's a quote from this gospel: "Do you have anything here to eat?" And it's just such a good one, when you think about that, to have that as your motto, it just kind of sets the tone, Do you have anything here to eat? And I love that so much, and you may have noticed it down on the sign as you were coming in. And it's so good for so many reasons, not just because, it's a nice thing to ask as you show up somewhere. But the beautiful thing of this, and I actually emailed this to the new boss the other day because he's going to have to pick a motto, and kind of explained it. And I said, I don't know of any bishop that has picked, "Do you have anything to eat yet?" So it's probably still on the table. But the reason I love it so much is you look at this gospel account, and here's Jesus in the upper room, just like we heard from John last week in his gospel. Today we get Luke's account right after those two disciples who had been on their way to Emmaus just run back. They're telling everybody what's going on. Jesus is in the midst. Peace be with you. They're terrified, and then once again, why are you troubled? I'm not a ghost. Here's my wounds. See, it's really me. You got anything to eat? And you think about that. It's that declaration that this is all real. That this isn't some philosophy. It's not some cleverly concocted myth. That the only thing that makes sense with all of the Gospels and the next 2,000 years, and the fact that we're even here right now, and I'm dressed in a way that's an allusion to the way that they dressed in Rome, 2,000 years ago, the only reason that happens is because he's really risen from the dead. And he asks the question, do you have anything to eat? And it's one of those things that's this declaration of the reality of the resurrection and how important that is, and to see that. The second thing that, as I said, has been kind of going around in my head all week long was how amazed I was when I was in seminary about how much people like Lent. Like, people are saying, like, I was just ready for it. I was ready to get back into it. Because as far as I was concerned growing up, I didn't like Lent at all. Like, I never wanted to get there. I was so excited to get to Easter, but it's like, no, we got to kind of buckle down and work hard again. And obviously, I've come to like it more and more. I mean, it's not my favorite time of the year, but I've learned too that by about this Sunday and Easter, it's like, as much as some people like Lent, you get to this point in Easter and people are already, self-included here, getting back into old routines, falling back into anxiety. I mean, you look at the apostles today, what are they? Startled and terrified. I mean, have you been startled at all in the last week? Have you gotten kind of just like back to normal? And the fact of the matter is, it's so easy to do that. In a way, it's like during Lent, there's this peace that's there because we're really focusing on a few things, on charity to other people, recognizing that the whole world doesn't just revolve around number one, right? That you have to look at the needs of other people. Going into fasting and realizing, hey, I can live without YouTube, And even getting into the point, and I think the most important one, of prayer. It's amazing how much better life is when you take the time to spend time with the one who created it all. When you take time to spend it with love incarnate, with Jesus Christ who comes to us. When we come to him startled, terrified, anxious, worried, and he says, why do troubles arise in your heart? I'm risen from the dead. Now, the thing is, it's not as though we need to be living as though it's perpetual Lent, right? Like, hey, everybody, no joy ever whatsoever, We're not Puritans, as I like to say before. We're not living in the town of Footloose, right? It's okay to listen to some music. It's okay, to have some fun. And I would say, too, that line, do you have anything here to eat? Jesus wants to be a part of all of the things that we're doing. And the difficulty about this time of year, if we just get back to business as usual, and we're not inviting him into everything, well, of course we're going to get anxious and startled and terrified. Because let's be honest, it's a mess out there, right? But he entered into all of this with us to show us the fact that his love is stronger than sin and death. Even to the point not to just say, I want to prove this to you as a philosophical principle. But no, he has the very marks on his body, the trophies that he bears in heaven right now that say, my love is stronger than that mess out there. So ultimately, I think the principle right now, as we hear him say, do you have anything here to eat, is to invite him into our eating, into our feasting, to make sure that we're not just going back to the old sources of comfort, right? And I'm going to tell you about a way that I screwed up in this very recently as like 8 hours ago, okay? I was at the confirmation retreat yesterday. It was incredible. Our kids are so good. And this year, for whatever reason, it didn't work out that any other parishes went with us. So it was just 50 of our own kids up at Camp Haynes. The weather is beautiful. Our volunteers are doing awesome. And the kids are so good. Now, they're middle schoolers. That's a tough time, right? And usually they have their phones. And your conversation with them is, good morning. And it's like, that's about all you get sometimes, right? They were so amazing, and it was awesome. And I didn't get home last night till like 11:15. And I was tired, and I got something to eat. And then it was like, you know what, I'm just going to sit down for a little bit. And what did I do? Not what I did during Lent. I didn't read a good spiritual work. I didn't just kind of relax and pray a bit. I opened up YouTube. And instead of even going to the part where it's like my subscription, so it's like the 5 or 6 things that I know I like, I just scrolled through the general thing. And I don't know what I did to the algorithm, but it thinks that I love motorcycles now. And all of a sudden, I'm like in that for like 20 minutes, right? And all of a sudden it's 20 after midnight, and I have Mass at 8 a.m. And I could be resting in our Lord, reflecting on the fact I got to hear 2 hours of middle schooler confessions, and they were amazing, and yet I'm watching motorcycle videos. Why am I doing that? And then, if I'm a little more tired, a little more anxious, what in the world do I expect? Our Lord wants to be in the midst of everything with us. And I'm not saying motorcycle videos are objectively bad. I don't even want a motorcycle. That's the thing too. Like, I don't like this stuff, and there I am, right? We can all fall into it. And I think the important thing as we move further and further away from the Easter Vigil, right? We've even screwed up the wick. Well, I've screwed up the wick on the Easter candle, so it's not blowing, so it gets smaller sometimes. But that doesn't mean we have to fall back into terror or being startled or any of this. Our Lord draws close, and not in just a weird philosophical way, not in just a mythical way. He wants to be in your life. In fact, I would say the response to the responsorial psalm today, Lord, let your face shine on us, it's like him saying to us, let your face shine on me. He wants to have a relationship with us. And I've found in my life, and I'm sure all of you have too, the more we pay attention to that relationship, the less terrified and troubled we are. It's not that we have to live in a perpetual Lent, but don't move away from the source of our peace, from the source of the one who says, peace be with you. Invite him in and let him say once again, do you have anything here to eat? Praise be Jesus Christ.